The sun has gone down at Hangman's Hill, and the ghost at Misery Corner isn't walking tonight. So, welcome to the Weird Tales Radio Show, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, witchcraft, magic, and folklore. And now, here's your host, writer, award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and sometime werewolf hunter, Charles Christian.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Weird Tales Radio Show with me, Charles Christian. Available on radio, podcast and pretty much anywhere that takes a digital sound feed. Now, we've got another big interview coming up later in the show, but before we get onto that, a little bit of a catch-up. Now, in end of January, we had Marshall Julius on the show to talk about the Marvel Avengers series and various other geeky type topics. However, here's a bit of an update because there's a new book out, and if you're interested in the whole Marvel saga, Spider-Man, the Avengers, X-Men, Black Panther, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, you'll have heard of Stan Lee and his role within Marvel Comics. This book is called True Believer, The Rise and Fall of Stan Lee, and it's by Abraham Reisman, and it's available on Kindle. It's a big book, printed nearly 400 pages. It's a substantial thing, and it is a fascinating insight into the early years of Marvel and digs into all the allegations and accusations relating to the professional creative relationship between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, who were the real creators of Marvel's most famous characters. I think it's best summed up by a review here by Neil Gaiman. A biography that reads like a thriller or a whodunit, scrupulously honest, deeply damning, and sometimes even heartbreaking. Yeah, it's quite an eye-opener. You'll enjoy it. Well, if you enjoy this show, you'll enjoy it. Right, let's get on with this week's interview. And in the hot seat coming up is Patti Negri, Los Angeles born and raised. Patti Negri, who now is often known as the Hollywood psychic, has been practicing earth magic for over 20 years. She's a psychic medium and a talent for conjuring spirits from the other side. She's also been involved in various TV projects across America, including MasterChef and America's Got Talent. And she's also been involved with the Zach Baggins and his various TV ghost hunting tales in the US. Patti also has a weekly podcast called The Witching Hour. Here's Patti. It's my great pleasure to be talking to Patti Negri. Let's start, as we always like to do with these things, in where did your interest in the esoteric and witchcraft and psychic skills, where did it start from? Did you come from a family that were inclined, or was it some childhood, teenage interest, or how did it all start off?
Well, it was born in me. I did not come from that family, but since I could speak, I literally remember talking to the other side, to dead people. I thought everybody could. It was completely normal. You know, the supposed imaginary person in the corner wasn't imaginary at all. Your imaginary friend. It was real information I could get on that medium psychic side. And even on the witchy side, I would find myself in my little suburban backyard, you know, pulling off plants and knowing if I stuck some rosemary and some mint in my mom's wallet, it would give her more money. I just knew these things. It was in the blood. It was never taught out of me by my family, but quite the opposite. I was raised without any kind of religion. My parents kind of just didn't talk about it, but my grandfather was this practically evangelical atheist, this outspoken leader of the community. He was a philosopher, a psychoanalyst, psychologist, hung out with like as Isaac Asimov, and Norman Lear was his best friend, Carl Sagan, and he was very academic, very Freudian. And of his children, anybody who had religion in their life, that was just such an insult to him. So like the word God or spirituality was like a dirty word to us.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. And sort of how then did you progress? I mean, what you've been doing in recent times, I mean, you know, appearing on MasterChef and America's Got Talent and things, but how did your life start off? You know, it's one thing to have an interest in something like this, and it's another thing to actually be able to either live by it or devote enough time to it.
Make it a career. Well, again, I was always a seeker. When I was 13 and old enough, asked if I could go to a religious service, and then I went to all of them. I became a seeker and I started studying, and just like my grandfather, but from the opposite door. We study religion and philosophy, blah, blah, blah. But I always kept that side of myself very private because I am in Hollywood. I was an actor, I was a dancer, and then by the time I was 30, I was a producer. I started a production company, and I did very corporate big shows, like industrial shows. And though this was a big, huge side of me, I'm like, my clients are people like Microsoft, and they cannot know that I dance around bonfires in a cloak and naked, or that I talk to dead people. They really can't know that. So I kept it very secret, very separate. This is that world. This is my coven world. But then in 2008, I think, and again, I'm kind of known in Hollywood. In 2008, when the big economic crash happened, and corporate entertainment became a dirty word because it got attached to all these people doing icky things, all of a sudden, that business started going just downhill as fast as possible, and reality television was coming up. Reality, and I remember somebody asked me to do a show. They're going, we need somebody who's really good and really legitimate with seance for this TV show. I'm like, nope, I can't do that. I'm sorry. I can't bring that real side of my persona. I could be an actor in something. No, we need somebody real. Like, no. And they're like, please. I'm like, what is the name of the show? And they said it was Mobile Home Disaster on Country Music Television. And I'm thinking, well, nobody's going to watch that. Sure, I'll do it. I got no other work coming on. So I did it, and I fell in love with the genre. Here I am. I get to be me, and I do have, I'm not just a witch. I'm not just a medium or psychic. I have this thing about empowering people. That's what my book's about. Like, people, we are these amazing beings. Take your power back. So I was able to, in a weird, goofy reality television docuseries drama, be the real me, show my real magic. I didn't have to memorize lines. They just had a couple of cameras to follow me around. I'm like, ooh, this is great. Because I also have like an improv and sketch background. Like, this is great. Think on your feet. Be fast. I fell in love with it. And then I remembered it was going to air. And I remember it's like, okay, no one's going to watch it. First thing in the morning in my production office, I get a call from one of my biggest bank clients. Hey, Patti, I saw you on television last night. And I'm like, oh, God, I'll never work for whoever they are again. Like, I didn't know you were into the paranormal. I love the paranormal. Blah, blah. And we had our best, most intimate conversation ever. I'm like, dang, okay, I am out of the closet. I'm out of the psychic closet, the medium closet, the witch closet. I'm out of the broom closet. So that all of a sudden, because I do know camera, I do know how to do this, and I'm really good and legit at what I do, I became the go-to person to call. Whether it's, Nicole Richie, the Bad Girls Club, Pit Boss, Beverly Hills, I mean, the silliest of shows or the most serious of shows, but I got to bring the real me and get to an audience I would never get to. And so, again, started getting the press there. And then when I started doing Ghost Adventures, which is what most people know me from, like 6 years ago, that's it. Everybody loves Zach Bagans. And so that's it. So I still have my production company. It's called Brain Brew Entertainment, but I have very little time. I did one little gig last week. And one day I was walking on a stage, and I think I was speaking to like 600 people at a college. And again, I'm doing my medium and we're talking to dead people, but I'm teaching them, again, this empowering thing about, I don't care what your religion is or belief system. We are amazing beings because we have free will. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not into money, but I'm like, I am getting as much money to walk on this stage and get treated like this little princess as I did for my last show on my corporate thing, where out of that same money, I had to pay 7 actors, 3 musicians, 2 weeks of a rehearsal hall, print the programs myself, help with the costuming myself, run rehearsals. Like, that is better.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Looking at some of the things you've got there, I've got a reference to, and I think it's the doll in the background, is it? It's a
Yes, it is.
104-year-old doll called Belle.
Yes, I know this isn't video, but might see her move and things. I've had her a couple years now. It was so interesting. She was sent to me by a girl in Belgium. She had seen me on Ghost Adventures, actually one of the spin-offs called Deadly Possessions. And I was doing a seance with Peggy the doll, who is actually a really dark, much more haunted doll. She used to belong to Jane Harris in the UK, who's on a show with you guys. And then now she's in Zach's museum. But this girl in Belgium saw me doing a seance with Peggy the doll, again, who gave people heart attacks and much more serious. And she could not handle Belle because Belle had made her sick for 3 years and her little daughter sick, made her hair fall out. So unless she put Belle in a drawer or in the shed, she got sick, and Belle wasn't happy in those places. So she just said, well, you take her. She didn't know what to do with her. So I said, sure, I'll take her because I could deal with things. So she sent her to me across the pond. Mm-hmm. And this is how powerful Belle was. I had never done a Facebook Live before, ever, not one. And I have a good amount of followers, but not like in the gazillions. I had never done one. And so just opening up Belle on camera, I had 50,000 views. Just that, and it wasn't me, it was this doll. Because usually I get, 300 people watched. Maybe up to 900 or 1,000 people watched. 50,000 people. Just because this energy, this doll pulled in, I'm like, holy moly. But she was dark. I would not let the sun set before I totally banished the really negative spirit in her. And then slowly this little girl, like 7-year-old girl spirit came out. But even that, at first, she was so draining to people. She gave one of my friends almost heart palpitations, literally. I would have to put rue and herbs and carry all these like protection things on the doll. So even though it was a good spirit, she was so draining of people. But she's over that now. She runs around the house, gets footprints, but she doesn't make anybody sick. Now she's just a camera ham. If we're filming here, or there's a TV thing, she's in the background moving around. People see her moving when no one's near her. And she always just takes stage and takes focus, kind of like a kid or an animal.
Yeah. Staring at her to see whether she's going to move.
Sorry, usually I would have my phone in a nice holder, but, technical difficulties of why we're even on this phone.
Now, one of the things you've been involved with are the Ghost Adventures live Halloween specials.
Yes.
They are, 4 hours and it's live. How do you cope with that? Because especially being a medium where you are being, you're having to be sensitive to what's coming in towards you.
Yeah.
That is really being on duty. That is really, that must be a strain. Yeah. How does that work out for you?
That one was really hard for a million reasons. Yes, you're being on duty. Yes, you're at Zach's museum, which is like truly one of the most haunted places in the world. Everything, he's brought things from all over the world. Plus the fact, from the TV mindset, ghosts and spirits do not know the term, let's break for commercial. They don't. All the good stuff happens when they break for commercial, so there's no resolution and this and that. So that was really hard. Chaos was starting to ensue. And then on top of that, Zach had brought in, and we have this running, like, not battle, but there's a girl, she's in the UK. Her name is Lady Snake. And Zach had brought her in, and she was doing dark magic in the basement, which had a bunch of dark magic going on. When Lady Snake was causing chaos, really chaos, that was making the spirits even weirder. And we did not know she was there. I knew the other people that he brought, all the heavy hitters in, like Justin Spurrier and Gary Galka, the inventors. We didn't know Lady Snake was there. Zach does that to me on purpose. Like, oh, by the way, you're going to go to the basement and she's doing black magic and you do your light magic and let's do it. So, but she was doing something that I was seeing these oozy black things, and it was so hard. That was the hardest 4 hours ever. I bet you, Ghost Adventures never does that again. It was hard for everybody.
Yeah. Now, with your Los Angeles, Hollywood type connections and where you live, you have done a lot on houses, connections in Los Angeles. Tell us about some of those. There's something there, the Hollywood Forever Cemetery experience?
Yeah, I've got some. Again, what's fun about Hollywood is, yes, we have the dark side, and I'll go into the Charlie Chaplin, Marilyn Manson house thing, but we also have. I like fun and happy ghosts, which you rarely see on television because they want the serial killers and they want to go to the prison or the insane asylum. But I like hanging out at the Hollywood Roosevelt, where happy ghosts are hanging by the pool, or the American Legion Hall, where Charlie Chaplin went back to play, or Hollywood Athletic Club, or Forever Hollywood Cemetery. That one was interesting. I was shooting a show there, actually a German show, I think. And Rudolph Valentino, I've like, don't tell me where the graves are. I want to find them on my own. I want the spirits to guide me. And Rudolph Valentino guided me to where he had a little display case for his pictures, but he would not guide me to the crypt where his ashes were, or his body was. And I couldn't figure out why. And then, so I had to find it on my own. It was just around the corner. And it was February, and it had like, cheap party store things on it and dead flowers from the holidays. I swear he was embarrassed to have me go to his crypt because this stuff was on it versus the pretty display. So I am sitting there ripping off this bad holiday decorations going, oh my God, am I going to get arrested for defamation of a grave when I'm doing what he wants me to do? And on that same one, I remember inviting Montgomery Clift to my house. And then we spent the night at the Hollywood Roosevelt. And Montgomery Clift was an actor big in his day. And he lived there for 3 months while filming From Here to Eternity. And he used to play his trumpet, so I brought a trumpet with me. And I swear to gosh, so they set me up in the room. They set a bunch of cameras. They left. I brought a trumpet. The second I blew the trumpet, they knocked me out. And there was this spirit here, and it wasn't Montgomery Clift. It was a very protective spirit. And I'm like, who are you? He's like, well, who are you? Again, I'm going to humanize our conversation, but it was just, well, I'm Patti. I'm just here to talk to Montgomery Clift and see what's going on. He goes, well, I'm Monty's, and he was coming up with these words: his attaché, his confidant, his assistant, his driver. I'm like, oh, you're his boyfriend. You can say that. It's a new era. I got it. This is good. He's safe. You're safe. And it was great. But I went through this whole time and space thing that I've only experienced one other time in staying in that room. So Hollywood ghosts are fun. We do have our dark side. I must say, again, this is a good one for your audience. I have had spontaneous combustion once. Here, now you can see my Barbie dolls, because I don't want it to be so wiggly. I had spontaneous. I was at a house. I was right in my neighborhood, actually. I live in the Hollywood Hills, right under the Hollywood sign, and it's an old, built in the 1920s, the first movie enclave. So the little writer's cottage next to the movie star mansion. And this particular house around the corner from mine, it was built by Charlie Chaplin for his girlfriend, Mary Astor, who was a silent film star of the day as well. Super party house. It houses just wild parties, this and that attracts things. And then after they did whatever they did, the Rolling Stones manager moved in. So the Stones lived there. Mamas and Papas for a while stayed there. Graham Parsons, all sorts of musician types. And then they moved out. And then the person who invented the real life sex doll moved in, and then he moved out. And then Marilyn Manson, the musician, moved in, and he would live there, and he was my neighbor for like 7 years. And then it got too scary for him, and he moved out. He recorded there. So the house itself obviously attracts creative, very creative, talented, somewhat chaotic, sometimes dark people. So the house was just pulsating with this energy. And we were doing a seance, and this one kid got disrespectful. Whatever you believe, be a skeptic or not, but you can't be disrespectful. And so the spirit, literally, first it's like throwing the French doors open. Everybody's screaming like at a like exact moment, like special effects, but no special effects. Nobody. Like, wow, that was wild. Then it happened again, and then the speakers on the floor came on with this white noise. This everybody's like, what is that? What is it? We looked later; they weren't even plugged in. But this energy is building, and I'm trying to keep control of it the way I lift the veil. But this kid was being an idiot, so he said one more insane thing, crazy thing, and all of a sudden, not him, but the cameraman facing him burst into flames. Real spontaneous combustion, like a V up his back, like angel wings of fire. Everybody's screaming. I'm screaming. Instead of being cool, medium witch Patti, I've become medic Patti, which I am. I'm an EMT. I'm like, drop and roll. And I'm calling in my guardian, shutting this down, shut this down. Oh my gosh. So, and everybody's screaming, and his shirt burnt off him like it was a synthetic. It wasn't. It should not have burnt him. And I'm like, we're done. I don't care what we're filming. No one burst into flame. We're done. We're done. But the cameraman, because he was a super skeptic, instead he was so inspired. He's like, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. A little blister. I have a sweater. Take this shirt off. I'm like, are you sure? I talked to the spirits, and I'm like, come on, we're not even going to get rid of you. We just want information. The idiot kid who caused all that got really well behaved all of a sudden. never spoke another word. So we finished the seance. All sorts of weird stuff happened. Glass flying across the room. So that was wild. But the coolest thing about that, and again, for saying how my witchcraft fits in, is 3 weeks later, the guy who caught on fire, he goes, look at my back. He showed me his back, and it literally looked like he had went and got a tattoo of a dragon. The scarring. It had the sharp teeth, the open mouth, the winged head into the shape of a serpent. And that is the exact energy I called in to shut down the seance. I work dragon energy. It's crossroads energy. That's who I called in. I'm like, oh my God, you have a tramp stamp of a dragon on the small of your back. That is about the coolest thing ever. And he agreed. He actually was so inspired by this whole experience. He wrote a script, a horror script he hasn't done it yet. I hope he does. But with Stephen Norrington, the guy who wrote League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and the Blade series. But they wrote this, it's about basically a TV psychic, a TV medium who does all the shows. And then something happens, another show, and a portal opens. And then it becomes a big horror film. But I sat down with him literally like 5 hours with the script. And I go, oh, Lauren, you can't say that on camera. He goes, but you said that. I go, I know I said that. I said that, and that opens a portal. You don't want to be one of those cursed horror films, do you? Which so often happens because ghosts and spirits, just like with the ghost adventures, they don't know the difference of this is being filmed, or especially on a horror film, this is not real versus real. Things open up things. So I changed the wording on that to something that wouldn't cause anything. So I hope he gets around to doing it. But yeah, I love Hollywood ghosts. And the clearing, which again, I've done, that's one of the things I do other than seances and mediumships, get rid of energies or spirits in houses. I've got to do the coolest things. Like if anybody remembers Aaron Spelling, who was like the biggest producer of the 80s, Love Boat fan. I got the ghost of Aaron Spelling out of the Spelling Manor, the biggest mansion in Beverly Hills, because he wouldn't leave the new owners alone. I was like, this is weird. I remember I actually cleared the Phil Spector castle of the ghost that was haunting that, so they could. It's like it's what I like about Hollywood ghosts again, and living in this Beverly Hills. I can't even tell you who my clients are because there's I've signed so many non-disclosure agreements. But big in life is big in death. So Henry the Quiet Banker is Henry the Quiet Ghost. Some big old movie star, music star, sports star, they're much more fun ghosts. I guess just like the serial killer ghosts are for if you want to go for that sort of thing.
Yeah. What's the story about the Barbara Lamar house?
Ah, yes. That is me. I believe, and I wholeheartedly now believe, that I am the reincarnation of Barbara Lamar. I didn't believe it at first. I didn't even know who she was. I was told in the 80s by another medium that And this was when everybody was discovering this, the whole Shirley MacLaine. Oh, and everybody was Cleopatra. She's like, you are somebody, Barbara Lamar. I don't know who that is. But I ran to a bookstore and I looked up, here's this typical 1920s, the round face, the bowed lips actress of the day. Mm-hmm. But she had my eyes and she wrote just like me. And she was born and she died at 30. I was born exactly 30 years later. And then at 30, instead of dying, I super into my powers. But I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot of weird coincidences. And then I'm like, the universe literally is throwing me into I would be somebody I'd never heard of. I'd be in the grocery store and somebody's talking about her. It's like, oh, why are you talking about her? Well, I'm doing a script on her. I'm an agent. I married a girl who looks like. I'm like, why is this getting to me? So I'm going, okay, this is weird. Too much coincidence. Well, all I knew is that she built a house in the Hollywood Hills. I live in the Hollywood Hills. If I built a house, I should know what it is. So I'm driving around and there's millions of houses in the Hollywood Hills. And I went and I stopped and I go, this house. And all you could see was the tile roof, a Spanish style tile roof, because it was a downslope hill house. Couldn't even see how pretty the house was. But there was this big wrought iron gate and this roof. I go, I know that house. So I didn't know how to prove it. And then again, the universe throws somebody in front of me and we're talking about it. He goes, oh, I collect pictures. Do you want to see my pictures of Barbara Lamar? Come to my house. I'm like, okay, in for a penny. So I went to his house and he goes, here she is at her house. There is that exact tile roof. There is the wrought iron gate with those numbers. I'm like, yeah, I've seen that house. And so I'm her. Okay. So I remember driving by that house. This was years ago. And I put a little note in the mailbox. I didn't want to sound crazy. I didn't want to say I'm the reincarnation. I just said, hey, I'm a fan of the silent movie star Barbara Lamar. Would love to see the house. Of course, they never called me. But years later, a couple of years ago now, 2 years ago, last year, somebody told me the house is for sale. The Barbara Lamar house is for sale. And it literally is not even a mile from my house. And so I called up the real estate agent and I said, okay, I'm not really looking, but I'm president of the neighborhood association next door. And people are looking for, old historic houses in the neighborhood. She goes, okay, yeah, I'll meet you there at 2:00. So I go there at 2:00. She's not there. So I called her up and she's like, oh, my assistant was supposed to meet you. I know who you are. Here's the lockbox, so you could let yourself in and have the house to yourself. I'm like, whoopee! I think Barbara did this. So I walk in the house. I had the house. I walk in, and just like with the Montgomery Clift, I was like two people at once. I knew every inch of the house. I knew what had been changed, what hadn't. It's like, no, there was supposed to be a bookcase blocking the stairway so people don't know there's a second floor. I honestly don't know. It's like dream state if I was there 5 minutes or 5 hours where I used to would hang out. It was the most magnificent experience. And it's like, okay, I'm her. And then I'm doing a seance at my dining room table and I'm her. I am Barbara Lamar. And then guess what? Barbara Lamar shows up at my seance. I'm like, what the heck? How does this even work? How can I be her and she be there? But that got me into thinking and just talking to spirits. There is no time and space on the other side. And I've always kind of known that. And I don't believe, even if I am the reincarnation of her, I'm not 100% her. I've got little through lines. It's like little essences of little karmic truths of it. So she can come to my seance. She can be in the other worlds and go visit whoever she wants to, and she can be me. So that was such a big, long, roundabout way to figure out. Again, just adding to my understanding philosophy of the other worlds. It's pretty cool.
Very cool. It's very cool.
You're listening to the Weird Tales radio show with Charles Christian.
Talking of other cool things, how did your witchy psychic medium career get you onto MasterChef and America's Got Talent?
And that is being a witch, I will tell you. Well, it started out with Wipeout. I part of my being a witch and part of my being this empowerment person is I had health problems, drug induced by my mom being pregnant. A pharmacist drug. And so at 30 years old, I was literally told that, because of all these health problems and female problems, you have a tumor in your brain, you have fractures in your back, and you have all this precancerous cancerous stuff that if you even make it to 50, which you probably won't, if you do make it to 50, you're going to be in a wheelchair because your osteoporosis is so bad. And I just kind of went, no, I'm not going to buy into any of this anymore. I'm a witch. I believe in magic. I know how powerful we are. Miracles happen every day. You don't need God or religion. So I went, no. Every symptom, every illness went away. Does she have lupus? We don't know. Fibromyalgia? I don't know. The brain, everything went away. Everything. I haven't been sick in decades. So literally, when I hit 50, instead of being dead or in a wheelchair, like the medical profession told me, I used a little bit of magic, positive magic, no negative, and I beat like 100,000 people, 80 to 100,000 people to get on Wipeout, which is the world's largest obstacle course, hardest, most physical obstacle course. It was on TV. I think there was one in the UK too. It's the one with the big red balls. Mm-hmm. So it was the hardest, most painful, scariest thing I've ever done, but the most empowering. But I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I use positive magic to do this. And I had to do physical testing. I had to go to see doctors and cardiologists and mental things. When you get on these shows, all of them, even masters, you have to go through testing. And I use positive magic, not, when you're at a big audition, like, oh, I hope they break their leg. I hope they don't get it. No, I'm sitting, I hope you make it. I hope. And all that positive energy resulted in me making it. So then I did that. I did the physical thing. Okay, I beat the odds. So what do I not do now? Because I'm not that physical anymore, and I was supposed to be dead. So, okay, what do people make fun of me of? Okay, cooking. My husband won't even let me in the kitchen. I got kicked out of home ec in high school. I'm going to get on Master Chef. So again, I'm at this LA Convention Center with 100,000 people, literally. And I made it. And I totally played the witch card. My first time doing it, I made Eye of Newt pumpkin soup. But for months of auditioning, I'm having to send them tapes. I'm having to cook. And I'm like, they are going to figure me out any minute that I don't even know how to boil water. But nope, and believe me, I get another 80 to 100,000 people to get on MasterChef. You are sequestered for weeks, even before you get on there. And as I'm walking up to that MasterChef kitchen, it was scarier than Wipeout. Like, what am I doing? Oh my God, what am I doing? As you're walking into the kitchen. And it was really fun. But again, I didn't last very long because they do figure out that you don't know what saute means. Yeah. But I got to cook for Gordon Ramsay and Joe Bastianich and Graham. And it was fun. I got to get my little magic out there. So then I'm going, okay, what's left? I did that cooking thing. So I have absolutely none of the right kind of talents that would get you anymore, never did, to get you on America's Got Talent. Same thing again. So, months, and I did that big audition thing. And then months later, there I am at the Dolby Theater where we shoot it in the U.S. Dolby Theater, rolling around on the stage with Howie Mandel with his dog wrapped up in a leash. It was the funniest disaster ever. I am a comedian too. We are rolling around, knocked over the dog. I was psychically reading his dog. And I knew it was a setup because all the auditions, I was supposed to be reading his little dog. And then for the show, they're going, okay, they're bringing on his son's big bulldog. Okay. Now, Patti, when you're on stage, make sure you get Howie up on stage with you. I'm like, okay. And make sure you and Howie get down to the dog's level. Get down on the floor, scratch down. Like, okay. They are setting this up for a comedic moment. So, of course, we do that. The dog jumps all over Howie. He knows the dog. It's funny. But we're rolling around the floor. We're wrapped up in a leash. And then I want to help him. I want to help him up. But Howie Mandel, and most everybody knows, he's got a germ thing way ahead of COVID. And so you can't touch him. So we are screaming at each other. We are laughing. I'm trying to help him up, but you can't touch him. I'm screaming, it's a cockfight. It's this or that, trying to get between him and the dog. It was pretty funny. I haven't figured out what my next big against all odds thing is. I don't know what else there is to do. But that's how magic works. And, faith in yourself and manipulating energy in a positive way.
Yeah, and you cover that in your book, Old World Magic for the Modern World, Tips and Tricks and Techniques to Balance, Empower and Create a Life You Love. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I created that because, again, my main job is working with people one-on-one in sessions. And I was noticing how much number one, how off balance we are. We have got so numb. I think that's even part of what the pandemic is about. We've turned into zombies, asleep at the wheel, phoned in, automatic pilot, and we're off balance. So, and we've given our power away. We give our way of power to anything, to fear, to limiting belief systems, to other people. And I'm like, grab it back. And the way I work elementally and the way I see energy and the way that I live in Hollywood and I don't have time, I do 900 things a day. Yes, it's great to meditate for an hour, but I don't always have an hour to meditate. I never have an hour. I have 30 seconds to balance out, pull it together. So I put all these techniques together using your basic psychology of mind, body, spirit, because we know we'll never surpass our belief system, our mind. It's going to be easy. You just made it easier. Mind, body, we have to take action. We can't sit on the sofa and get things done. And spirit, that's the person, but people don't get, because that's the less tangible. But that's the battery that makes it happen. Because mind, body, spirit, when you have all three, you get it. If you're missing two or three, it's wishful thinking. But the spirit, that could be somebody's belief system. You can go to church or temple and pray. Or you could do what I would do, a spell working or magic. Or you could do new age. You could do, vision boards, affirmations. But I came up with these things like putting everything into the elements, air and fire and water and earth, like early man, like pagans like myself, or Native Americans. So if you get that chatty head, that's your air element. 30 seconds, deep breathing, vowel sounds. This chatter goes away. It's emotional. You're angry. You're sad. That's your water element. Run your hands underwater. 30 seconds. It goes away. So that's what they really are. Tips and tricks and techniques to do. And I made the book super simple. I spent actually more time unwriting it than writing it because I wanted it simple for, you don't have to be a magician or a witch or any belief system. And I know when I started really studying this, like 30 whatever years ago, I would buy these big fancy books and they'd sit on the shelf and they'd be boring or overwhelming, and I'd buy a really simple book and I would devour it. So that's what I did. So it's great. It's been a bestseller in like 5 countries so far. And I don't have to say it over and over again to people I work on, whether I'm, again, talking to a group or I'm teaching a class or one-on-one. I could just go, chapter 7, read chapter 7. Here's the book. I don't want to explain this again. It's really easy. Follow the moon cycles. So I have a chapter on love magic. I have a chapter on how to talk to the dead, how anybody, or dumb suppers and respect for the dead, health and weight loss, just how to clear your house of whether it's ghosts or not, just the bad energy that causes arguing and illness. Again, simple how-to.
Changing completely different tack, Vampire Con in Las Vegas.
Yes, Vampire Con. I'm a vampire now, too. I actually met Father Sebastian, a good vampire, just like I'm a good witch. Don't drink blood. But I met him on one of the Halloween specials. It wasn't the live one. It was the year before of Ghost Adventures. I was kind of locked away in a gypsy cabin and didn't know who was there, as Zach always does. And I was seeing somebody passed out on the floor, and it was this beautiful vampire man, Father Sebastian. So we got to know each other a little bit, just as you do in Hollywood. And he offered to fang me, which is make me a pair of custom fangs. And I'm like, no, I don't know. Sounds intriguing, but I only work in the light. And my idea of vampires is not real positive. You suck energy. You do this, those vampire people. And so I started reading his books, and he's very much the magical section. And his magic is exactly like mine. But instead of some sort of different deities, but instead of putting on a witch cloak, he puts on vampire fangs. I'm like, oh, this is good. So I'm now very much part of the Sabretooth clan. It's a beautiful culture. It's about elegance and graciousness, and you bow and you curtsy, and you have balls all over the world in Paris and Austria and Dallas and New Orleans and Vegas. And so we 2 years, again, everything's on hold now. We did Vampire Con in Vegas. We took over a whole hotel of, it looks like a very old school antique hotel, looks like it'd be vampires, and 3 days of magic. There would be in a little chapel I held. So it was my first time doing a seance in a chapel for vampires in the little wedding chapel church. And there was workshops all day by Norse, Viking magic and this magic and empowerment and vampires by the pool and then dancing all night. Pretty great. And they're beautiful people, or we are beautiful people. Again, all encompassing. Take full responsibility for yourself and who you are and your actions. You're not going to give away your power to some deity, God or something, make it all right. But they're very hedonistic and very full of life, and let's celebrate life to its fullest. Vampire Con. Rolling Stone just did I made it in Rolling Stone. My mama would be proud. They just did a whole a photo essay of the last Vegas Vampire Con. It's pretty cool.
I've seen that one. Yes. Yeah. You've got that on your website, haven't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Right, now, going from vampires, spectrophilia or ghost sex.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, I am considered an international expert on ghost sex. I actually went viral, a show that you have in the UK. I think it's called This Morning or Good Morning This Morning.
Yeah.
I was an expert on that. It happened. I think you become an expert when the field is very, very little. When there's 3 people in the expert field, you rise to the top. But I had a client who was having this experience. It's been around forever. It's been around since the beginning of time. It's the hero story. A heavenly being, whatever it is, comes down, has sex with a human. And if you believe in ghosts, if you believe grandma could come hold your hand or have a message at the end of your bed, why would sex, intercourse, which is such an important part of the human condition, all of a sudden be taboo when somebody's dead, if you're believing in spirits, if you don't. So I had to work with a client who was having the bad side of it. And sadly, the bad side of it, as in everything, gets all the press, incubus and the succubus and the demon coming down. But it isn't always. My actually best friend, her husband died very young of cancer. And when he came to her and it was like, oh, wait, that's our regular foreplay. That's in this. And it's beautiful. So I had to study it for a client. And then I did a movie about it, actually, and they've only played it once, sadly. It was for Travel Channel. It was a film called Ghostly Lovers. And it was a kind of like Hallmarky type movie, but all the good sides of ghost sex, of when your deceased lover comes to you for closure, or for a woman, sometimes when women or men have lost their sensuality or their connection to sexuality, that's when a spirit lover will come in and reawaken that. I don't think people should stay with it forever. I talk about, geographically undesirable relationships. They don't even live on the same realm as you. Can't bring them home for the holidays. But it's a really good transition thing. And I like that it gets public because so many people experience, and because our modern sex is so taboo, especially in the U.S., maybe more than maybe the UK, and then ghosts are so taboo. There's all these people experiencing it and thinking, am I crazy, or am I evil, or I'm possessed by the devil? No, none of the above. It's just this real thing that has happened always and just not been talked about.
Was that when you were on the British TV show? Was that with the Irish woman who was marrying a pirate?
No, she came after. It was so funny because they were saying we've never talked about this show before. And I'm like, yeah, you have. But no, see, sadly, besides the bad stuff, the crazy stuff gets, I don't think you can get engaged to a ghostly lover. I don't think you could have a baby with a ghostly lover. The crazies are out there too in all of this realm, as you know, because it's the world you work in.
Yeah.
There's legitimacy of it, and there's the not.
The not, yeah, exactly. I got a note here about San Fernando Valley.
Oh.
What's that about?
It's so funny. It's here in Los Angeles. It's the valley side of the Hollywood Hills. It's one of the most haunted places. It's so funny. And I think a lot of it, because there was a lot of Native American Indian stuff there, and everybody goes to that Native American or the Indian burial ground stuff. But so many of the darkest stuff, it also became like, the adult film capital and shady people. Not that it has to be shady. I'm not judgmental, but all sorts of stuff. It's this valley of goop. Some of the most the places of clearing that I can't clear are places because they attract the dark drug use or the dark drug dealing and the criminal element. it's so dang haunted. Like if you get into that Chatsworth, Reseda area, I have the guys I was working with forever. We did a Ghost Adventures episode there called Reseda House of Evil. Somebody had died in every room, or OD'd, or been killed, or suicide, and blah, it's there. Then we did another episode in Chatsworth again, where this couple had been strangulated, and it's like it's crazy haunted for just being this very suburban section of Los Angeles.
Right.
And also, that was a very big part of the big earthquake we had. Was it 94, the Northridge earthquake? And when earthquakes happen, that's the last big one I even felt. I think that unleashes energy that can cause stuff like extra spirit activity too. Earth just cracking in the core somehow.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And obviously everything's on hold at the moment with the pandemic in terms of events and things. But what projects have you got coming up in the future?
Yes, as far as a project is all the Paracons and events. I was supposed to be doing a haunted castle tour of Ireland in May. We've just pushed back that to September, hopefully, or maybe next year. The one that hasn't been canceled yet, I'm supposed to be a Paracon in Texas in late summer, Vulture City Paracon in Arizona. Again, this is all dependent on how we do with the thing. Filming in LA is just starting, but there's so much protocol. It's interesting. We shot a Ghost Adventures. We shot it at the Cecil Hotel, which is their new 2-hour special. Talk about dark and haunted and crazy places. I was possessed from the minute I walked in. Zach had to yell at me because he thought I was jumping out a window. I don't know, maybe I was, because I led him to a room where somebody jumped out that window, and I'm opening the window, and he's screaming at me, "Why are you opening that? Sit down, sit down." Like, why is Zach yelling at me in my trance state? But we did the whole thing in masks, the entire cast, entire crew. It's trippy doing a television show completely masked. Yeah. I did 2 others that weren't masked. I just did Trevor Moore, which is a talk show where we solve all the problems of the world. But again, you have to go for your COVID test Monday, and then you have to stay home all week, and you have to go for another one, and then you have to go for another one. I just did that on the Lily Singh late night show too. So they're like kind of taking care of you while you stay home a little bit, and then you have to do that immediate test, and then go right to set, no matter when you're sick. And then there's a COVID officer on set, which is like a drill sergeant. Wait, you're within 6 feet, holding up. So, but they're making it work, because we need to get back to work, but we need to do it safely. Yeah, and you can.
Yeah. How is it going with the vaccine over there?
Well, we don't have enough. We're in Los Angeles right now. You have to be 65 and older. So all my friends who are 65 and older are getting it. I don't know when if teachers are next. They're just kind of doing it by the need. So I'll get it as soon as I can. But I don't fit into any of those. I'm not a healthcare worker. I'm not over 65. I'm not whatever comes next. But it's going well. Of course, we have the few nutty people protesting it, like, they're not injecting alien babies into us. They're not changing our DNA. It's a vaccine, but whatever.
Anyway, it's a delight talking to you, and many thanks for making the time. Anything else? Any other burning topics you've got that we haven't discussed?
Burning topic? No. I think just for everybody, you guys, life is amazing, but life is completely what we make it. You know that. I'm sure your listeners too, you guys. But magic is everywhere. You just got to look sometimes. Look for it. We've become such a non-magical, mystical society. That's why your show and what you do is so great. We've gotten so mundane. Find the magic. It's there.
Well, I think that's a lovely note to end on. And definitely echoes my thoughts on that there's mystery and magic out there, and you just have to be sensitive towards it, and rather than spending all your time on your iPhone.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, Patti, it's been a delight talking to you. Thank you ever so much for your time, and all the best for the coming year, and let's hope you can get out more with more of your adventures and your shows and everything else?
We will. I think we're gonna, when we get through this, it's gonna be like the Roaring '20s again. I think it's gonna be like, we're out, we're free. So much celebration, so much joy, so much communication and communing with each other. New party.
New party, yes. Yes, plenty of ghost sex all around, yes.
Ghost sex all around. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor and a pleasure. You're a delight. Thank you.
Thank you. When I do radio shows with other people, that's where I'm a guest on their shows, one of the questions that often comes up is about dragons, because I have written about them, and also the topic of dragon slaying, which there are multiple different methods, including enticing them with the girdle, which in modern language is really the belt of a maiden, and the dragons become very docile and you can kill them. The others one include feeding sheep with a poisoned food and then sending the sheep off to be eaten by the dragon, and the dragon in turn is poisoned. There's also one story from Klagenfurt in Austria where they were being plagued by a dragon, so they wrapped a bull with barbed wire and then had a chain coming off the end of the barbed wire. So they pushed the bull towards the dragon's lair, and the dragon emerged, ate the bull, but unfortunately, as it was halfway down its throat, realised it was wrapped up in barbed wire and was effectively caught like a fish on a hook. So the locals then hauled the creature out and slew it before it could correct its mistake. However, my favouriteest tale comes from my home county of Yorkshire in the north of England, and it's a novel explanation for the creation of Filey Brig, which is a long neck of rock which stretches about nearly a mile from the headland and provides the bay with its sheltered aspect. And the legend's grown up as to how come this long, almost a peninsula of rocks appeared there. Now, according to legend, the town of Filey was once terrorised by a dragon until the locals tricked it into eating a large amount of parkin. That's Parkin, which is a Yorkshire foodstuff, a pudding. It's a soft, sticky ginger cake made with oatmeal and black treacle. It's the kind of food that when you eat it, you find you've got bits of it stuck in your teeth. Anyway, very, very sticky. So what happened was the dragon snarfed down a huge amount of parkin and then had to dive into the sea to wash the cake from between its teeth, whereupon the locals ambushed the dragon and drowned it. And what are now the rocks of Filey Brig are in fact the dragon's fossilised bones. So there, if you're ever out and you encounter a dragon, make sure you've got a sticky parkin or gingerbread cake to feed to it. Let's have a ghost story. And those of you, well, I don't think any of you are left who are old enough to remember this, but you may have seen it at some stage on the box at some point or in a video. There's an old 1935 British movie called The Ghost Goes West, which is all about an American businessman who buys an old Scottish castle and has the whole thing dismantled and moved over to Florida. But along with the castle comes the ghost. It's a romantic comedy fantasy, so nothing too scary about it. Anyway, bear that in mind because it really crops up with this next ghost story. It's a recurring manifestation towards the end of February, and it is in the town of Oundle or maybe Oundle, I don't know, in Northamptonshire in England, and it's at the Talbot Hotel. And it is said that the hotel contains the staircase from Fotheringay Castle. Now, Fotheringay Castle was where Mary Queen of Scots was kept in prison and eventually executed. And it's said that when the staircase was removed from the castle and taken to the hotel, her ghost came with the staircase. And it now wanders around the hotel, moving pictures, and some people have reported seeing and I quote, the gaunt face of a woman staring from out of the hotel's windows, and somebody else said they were awoken in the night by the sensation of something sitting on their bed. So that's the Talbot Hotel in Oundle. Yes, it is Oundle. In Oundle, Northamptonshire, at the end of February, Mary Queen of Scots haunts the place, or at least haunts her old staircase. And, maybe one day I'll get my act together and go there and have a look and see if I can get some photographs, not of the ghost, but of the staircase. And that's it. We're out of time. Now, over in the UK, it's just been announced, the day I'm recording this show, that we have our roadmap out of lockdown. And very exciting it is too. What will we do with our newfound freedom? I've already got my first road trip planned. Yep, it's at the end of the April, and I'm travelling almost all the way to Southwold, which, for those of you who don't know it, is about 15 miles away, to a health centre for my second COVID vaccination. Yay, living the dream. What an exciting time we all live in. Anyway, just remains for me to say this is Charles Christian saying thank you for listening in. Please join me again next time. Until then, stay well, stay weird. Goodbye.
Black Shuck, the demon dog of East Anglia, is baying at the moon, which means it's time for us to go. You've been listening to the Weird Tales radio show with Charles Christian, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, witchcraft, folklore, and the paranormal. You can keep in touch with us online at www.urbanfantasist.com, by email to urbanfantasist@icloud.com, and on Twitter @urbanfantasist. Join us again next week for another edition of the Weird Tales radio show. Goodbye.